adequately rewarded. And I'm not talking necessarily of equal compensation from what they can get abroad, but just so that their opportunities, their hard work, their efforts will be adequately rewarded. I think we can also aspire to a situation in the future when our own bright young kids will want to come back and participate in what's happening here. All of us have relatives abroad, and all of us know that almost all of those relatives, really, all else being equal, would much rather be living here in the Philippines and being with us here. Life here is really something that can be much more pleasant than life abroad. And of course, being in the company of your family and friends is quite a major plus. So I go by the belief that I really think that at the end of the day, the work that is ahead of us really has to do with, number one, improving the quality of our basic education, and really focusing in particular on the teaching profession and seeing what we can do to uplift the quality of teachers so that not only our own kids here benefit from it, but even facing the reality that so many of our teachers leave for abroad, we will still have a good supply of good teachers. But secondly, and perhaps on a longer term basis, and really my appeal to you to get involved in this fight against corruption is along these lines. If we put our hands together and work towards building a better country where the future looks more promising than it does now, where our young, bright graduates will feel that it is a reasonable risk for them to take to cast their lot with us. If we can build such a country, then that is the ultimate answer. That is the ultimate answer that will allow us to keep our best and brightest, and that will attract those who have already left to come back. I think that's the way I see it. And so I really think that that's the direction we should be trying to take. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from UP Open University. We have there Professor Primo Garcia. Please come in.
Good afternoon. This is UP Open University. In light of the new UP Charter, in what ways can the business sector help UP so it can effectively perform its role as a social critic and an agent of social change?
Well, I have made one specific recommendation, which is for us to link arms together and do something on this great issue of corruption. I am specifically recommending that we try to organize ourselves, putting your brains together with the resources that we can mobilize both from the business sector and from the international community. And let's put together a definitive study to start with, but an action program is what I'm really hoping we will come up with on the specific steps we can take so that corruption will at the very least diminish in this country and hopefully be ultimately eradicated. That's the kind of partnership that I think is doable. There are many other things that can be done together. The establishment of professorial chairs and scholarships are very, very practical things that are already being done in a large way and are very, very helpful. Massive endowments for setting up of buildings and all kinds of campuses, that kind of thing. But what I have in mind is something that really brings us together, not just in terms of donations, but really a partnership of two sectors at the very least, or maybe many sectors, but perhaps led by the academic sector and with the active participation of the business community in search of a solution to the one most serious problem eating up our country's soul is really what I'm looking for. So that's the challenge I have in fact posed, and I hope that maybe before the end of the afternoon I will hear a preliminary response.
All right, thank you very much. We have another question from UP Manila. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon from UP Manila again. This question goes, aside from the participation in the road mapping that you suggested earlier, can you name your expectations from UP as its short-term endeavors toward addressing poverty and corruption, maybe in collaboration with PBED?
Aside from the road mapping that you suggest earlier, can you give your expectations from UP as its short-term endeavors? maybe in collaboration with PBED, to address corruption and poverty?
It's very easy to have our problems overwhelm us. So I believe in really focusing on specific issues and specific approaches to specific problems. I believe that education is, at the end of the day, is really one of the major answers to poverty in our country. If we succeed in improving the quality of education that is available to the masses of our people, particularly those who I really don't have the privilege of going to the best universities, then we would be addressing we would be empowering our people with the skills and the knowledge that they need so that they can compete more effectively in the marketplace for labor, for work, and they can aspire to move up in terms of their own circumstances. So I really believe that the approach has to focus on education and the quality of education. So Philippine Business for Education has focused, as I said earlier, on the quality of the teacher as one of the key ingredients that will allow us to improve education. But we've also looked at several other things. One is, I'm sure most of you are aware that the basic education cycle in our country runs only 10 years. This is from grade school to high school. We have only 10 years. We're one of the very, very few countries in the whole world that has only 10 years for basic education. I think in Asia there's only 1 or 2, and those are doing something about it already. We are very strongly advocating moving to at least 12 years, like all of our neighbors in the ASEAN region, because that is very, very fundamental. Not only do we have, unfortunately, at the present time, poor teachers, we also have a very short basic education cycle. So when you combine the two together, the quality of the output of our basic education system is really very weak. And these are kids, therefore, who are really very poorly equipped to proceed to university and to look for the right kind of employment that will allow them to uplift their lives and work themselves out of poverty. So that is one. The quality of teachers is one. The basic education cycle is the other. The third one we're focusing on is the resources we are making available to education. If you look at the per capita expenditure of kids, not throughout the developed world, but even if you compare countries like Singapore and Thailand and the Philippines, the per capita expenditure on education by the Philippines is so much smaller than even our neighbors in Thailand, and particularly Malaysia and Singapore. And on top of that, and I've said this in the donors' dinner, sometimes we tend to waste even the limited resources that are available to us. For example, I guess we reacted very strongly to the cyber education project because we thought very strongly that it was a very wrong priority, given all the needs that have to be addressed in our basic education sector. Those resources, we believe, should be devoted to addressing those fundamental needs first. Second, the proliferation of state universities and colleges, I think, is also a dissipation of resources. I have expressed the hope, and I hope it will somehow gain ground, that the University of the Philippines really should serve the function of being the national university and really be the world-class university that we can all be proud of and be the one that will cater to the needs of all the regions in our country, instead of trying to do that by establishing all kinds of state and local universities, many of whom, I am sad to say, are really lacking in quality and lacking in resources to have good quality. So instead of dissipating our resources, let's focus those resources on the fundamental things that need our attention, on the basic needs of our basic education sector, improving the quality of our teachers, of our facilities, expanding basic education from 10 to 12 years, and really giving the University of the Philippines all the resources it needs so that it can be as excellent a university, as excellent a national university as it can be.
Thank you. We have a question from UP Iloilo. Good afternoon, Professor Celia
Good
Parcon.
afternoon. This is Professor Parcon, the moderator for UP Visayas. The question is, the popular perception seems to be that the business sector figures prominently as a factor in major decisions made especially by the present political administration. Perhaps this leads sometimes to even more corruption. To your mind, how can your sector use this particular advantage or clout, if you may, to help curb corruption and perhaps contribute towards social transformation?
I need to think about that one. It's true the president and the leadership listens to some people in the business community. But not all of us have clout and have access to her. In the first days of President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, she invited some of us to sit down with her, and many of us were members of the Makati Business Club. You will remember, rightly or wrongly, we were very actively involved in EDSA 2, and we were among those who cheered when Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo became our president. And we sat down with her in a private meeting in Malacanang, I think in the first week of her administration. And there were all kinds of questions that were raised, but one of the questions was, what can we do to convince people that we are serious in our drive against corruption? And I, in my usual outspoken manner, blurted out and said, jail the tax evaders and smugglers. Bring them to justice. Jail just one big fish, and you will be making an example of somebody who is viewed as untouchable by our society, and there will be a chilling effect on others who might think of doing the same thing. The then Secretary of Justice, who was then Nani Perez, looked at all of us, looked at us gathered around the table, and said, "Are you sure you want that? We will end up going after you guys," they said. And one of my dear friends, Joey Quisha, said, "Yes, we want you to do it." And he supported me, but many others sort of looked down on their tables. So I guess in the same way that in the academic world, there are people who are trying to do right and people who are not interested in doing right, in the business community, we also have, I guess, some people who believe that there is a difference between right and wrong, and there's a difference between doing things the right way and doing things in an honorable way. On the other hand, there are people who believe that all that matters is how much money you make. So I guess that ultimately is my answer. There are advisors and there are advisors. There are people who will tell the president that it would be good if she would avoid corrupt deals, and it would be good if she did not go into all of these transactions that result in a lot of corruption that deprive our people of all of the resources that could go to better use. But there are also people who will tell her that this is too good an opportunity to pass. And so I guess it depends at the end of the day who our leaders will listen to. I think it is for that reason that it's up to us who care and up to us who believe that there is such a thing as right or wrong, and there is such a thing as caring about our country rather than simply ourselves. It's up to us to speak out, and even if we turn blue in the face, and even if